It is 5 o'clock. It is time for our appointed meeting. We'd like for the commissioners to be sure to turn on your microphones and speak into the microphone when you have a statement. So we'll call the committee to order. In the old business, we have none. In new business, Mayor Brittain has an update for us on the business.
Just a couple of things. One is at your desk is, since your seat is just the financial documents that we received during the budget process from the volunteer fire departments. So that's just for you to review at your leisure. Second is Highway Superintendent Barry Poole has asked for permission to submit a letter of intent to purchase the garbage trucks. The letter of intent would, if we went ahead, if you went ahead and okayed it and the finance department issued it to the vendor, then we could go ahead and get in line for the garbage trucks. If it's your intent to fund them. So what he is asking for is permission to submit a letter of intent to purchase. And go ahead and do that this month.
Do we need a motion on that?
I think we need a motion on it.
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, like sign?
Thank you.
Dr. Perry, before we start, I have left off the opportunity for visitors to speak to the committee. So I would like to ask if anyone would like to address the committee. 5 minutes.
Linda Noe, 2343 Joseph Stevens Road. All I would like to ask is that this budget committee posts the school budget. I don't know if you've already got it on your website or not. Okay. Either you, well, I'd like it posted both places because it's part of your budget now, the school budget. The other thing is I'd like to ask that you post the nonprofit book in its entirety, not just with a list of what's being requested, but with all the backup information that each nonprofit provides. Thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else that would like to address the committee? Dr. Perry?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, staff, certainly do appreciate the opportunity to come out and share a budget with you, and we will post the budget on our website. We'll have that up tomorrow. So this evening we have the 6 objectives. First of all, demonstrate our appreciation. We'll talk a little bit about some district highlights. It's been a challenging year, but I think it's been a good year. I think it's good to kind of reflect on that and present some of that information. We'll also do the budget presentation about the things that we changed from last year to this year. Then we'll talk to you a little bit about ESSER funding. I know that you've had some of those funds yourself. We'll talk a little bit about what we have received. Then we'll talk to you about capital projects that we have, and then we'll respond to any questions that you may have. So first of all, we know this is a difficult job. We know that being a public servant these days, it's hard. Because all you do is you have unlimited requests, but you got limited budget to do that with. And so I know that as soon as we leave, somebody else comes in. And whether it's the Sheriff's Department or EMS or whatever, all of those people have legitimate requests too. And your job is to look at a bunch of legitimate requests and decide with the limited funds that you have what you're going to fund. And so we do understand that's tough. And we do appreciate the support that you've given the school system and to our students. And we want you to know that that support doesn't go unnoticed, that our folks realize that you provide the funds to provide good benefits for our teachers and staff and that you take care of our students. And so we appreciate that and we recognize that. Some of the school highlights this year, if you think back to March of last year, we've kind of grown so accustomed to the virus now, we don't really remember back that people were hoarding up all the toilet paper, that people were hoarding up all the canned goods of thinking this was going to be just the apocalyptic kind of event. And so, at that point in time, a lot of us were very scared about what was going to happen. Could we have school? Could we have any of those kind of things? And as we approach this year, there's a lot of things that we were worried about, but it's actually been a pretty good year for us. And one of the first things that we'd like to say, we kept our schools open every single day. There was a couple of days where we asked folks to come in on a voluntary basis, but every single day we were open. We're the only school that I know of that kept open the entire 175 days. The other part that we did is that we kept our staff and students safe. I believe from the numbers that we've got is that the county had about a 14% infection rate throughout this whole thing. The school district had 7%. So, and we put 10,000 people in these small classrooms, but we kept the mask on, we kept the hand sanitizers going, we talked about safety protocols. And so we had about half of the contagion rate that the county had. And that's with us putting everybody together. So I really feel good that we put some things in place to keep staff and students safe. Also, this is a feat that I think is pretty amazing. Most of us don't really worry about where we're going to get the next meal from. Actually, most of us are worried about eating too much. And so it's a situation that not all of our folks were in that situation. That we made some trips to some homes this year that were just pitiful. It broke your heart to go in there with some of the shut-ins that we had, and they had 3 or 4 kids and couldn't get out, and they were living on the things that we provided. So over the course from March to the start of school, we prepared and delivered over 1.2 million meals. So, and that includes breakfast and lunches, but over 1 million meals that we gave to people, and all that was free. So we provided all of those meals to everybody free. Most of those meals people came to pick up, but a significant portion of these is when we prepared it, we had teachers who were not on the clock, who were not getting paid, but they came, loaded up their own personal trucks, their own personal vans, and they delivered this back into the schools, into the communities in which they live. So we really feel good about that, and our cafeteria folks just worked incredibly hard. Also, you're aware of this, that we provided free daycare. Throughout the course of summer, we had about 500 students come to these extended school programs that served about 300 families. In a total of 285 days of free child care. So, you know, first of all, it started out with the essential workers, and then we said, well, since we're not in school, some parents needed us to be in school to provide that care. And so we just opened it up during the times that we were supposed to be open. We opened the extended school program up to everybody. And it cost us a great deal of money, but we had some money in reserves that we were able to do that. We came here one night actually asking for funds, which you guys approved, but we never did request those funds. We were able to get through without using either the city funds or the county funds. But we're proud that in a time where people needed help, we've supplied that. And got a lot of very nice emails from some folks. One single mother who was a nurse working at the hospital saying she didn't know how she could keep the family going unless we provided that child care. And we kept her kid from 6 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock at night. So, and then that gave her a little bit of time to get some things done, to go out and shop and do those kind of things. The other thing is that we did is we created virtual education. A lot of people would think that would be a fairly simple process to do, but when you have to purchase 8,000 computers, image those computers, get them ready, educate about 3,000 people in terms of how to use those particular computers, and that says 600, it actually should be 6,000. We trained over 6,000 parents and students about how to use those computers. We did that all in 2 months. So we set up virtual classes, we did in-person classes with that. We also distributed over 750 Wi-Fi devices so that people who didn't have access to the internet could have access to the internet. Now, plus that, we actually had a technology hotline that was open all during the day, and we kept it open to 8 o'clock at night. So if a parent had a technology issue, they could call in, and we had somebody there to help them with all the technology issues they had. During the year of COVID, where it was very difficult on a lot of different projects, we were able to complete the West High School project on time and under budget. The other part that I feel that's been pretty significant is that during this time, we've averaged about 95% attendance. So that with our students, we had 95% attendance in our school. Now, some of them attended virtually, but the other ones attended in class. But to get there, you had to attend virtually or in class. And so we had about 95% attendance rate, which we thought was well. The other part in terms of keeping our staff and students safe is that as soon as the state allowed us to participate in the vaccination program, we had everybody in our schools that wanted to be vaccinated. We had vaccinated in 4 days. So we had a pretty strong program set up and had some things lined up to get folks in and get them vaccinated. And not only did we get them vaccinated, but if they had health problems, we allowed some individuals to teach remotely. We allowed those the first opportunity to teach remotely, so they didn't have to come in, and then some other folks would put some partitions around them to keep them safe. Extracurricular events. If you remember back when we were first talking about, oh, we're going to have football games and those things, a lot of us thought if we could have 2 or 3 ball games, we'd be lucky. In this, I think we only canceled, it was less than 6 ball games. Basketball and football, all of those combined. We actually had a pretty good year. And we did that because we kept some of those safety protocols in line about making sure that people did the right kind of thing. So I really feel good about our extracurricular events. And it wasn't only at the high school. We actually did a little survey with some of our parents about what they felt was the biggest thing about school. It wasn't we kept school open. It wasn't that we had a virtual program. The biggest thing was we had elementary basketball. The grandparents and the parents, they thought that was the most important thing that happened this year. We allowed them to have 10 games. And so the extracurricular events mean a lot to people sometimes. And so with those, we were able to have really the full slate of extracurricular events that we normally have. And then we worked very closely with Mayor Brittain and then Mayor Chesney in terms of keeping the community informed during those first few months of COVID when we needed to get a lot of information out. So we provided some of our folks to do some of the videotaping that went out, and we tried to actually write articles and some of those kind of things to kind of help folks keep informed. Into the general fund, just so that you would know kind of where some of the money is coming from. Now, these are 2 sets of revenues. One, this first set does not include food service and some of our federal programs because, you guys don't have really anything to do with federal programs. That comes from the federal. But in our general fund that's absent of some of those funds that's almost totally funded by federal, the state's going to put in about 64% of the revenue. You guys would put in about 29%. We get fund balance and reserves that we use on about 5%. We get some other revenue for some grants and some different things that's a little bit less than 2%. And then the federal does chip in a little bit on the general. Now, if you look at our overall budget, so this includes everything, our school lunch program, our special ed program, all of that. Then the state would put in about 56%. You guys would put in about 26%, and then the feds would put in about 13%. And that 13% on the federal level stays pretty constant. It's between 11 and 13% in most years. So now, where do we spend the money? And I've shown you this graph before, but about 82% of our total general fund budget goes to salary and benefits. And then you can look at some of the other things, like custodial maintenance, utilities, that's about 5%, transportation is 2%, technology 2%, capital outlays 4%, textbooks about 1%, some other expenditures grouped together is 4%. But most of the money that we receive, we send to people. We think that's the most important thing in our district, and we spend it on people. Of that 82%, if you look up in the corner, 95% of everything that we spend goes to somebody within the school. So a custodian, a cafeteria worker, a teacher, a guidance counselor, a principal. And the reason why we like to point this out is a lot of times where if you just get rid of the central office, then everybody can get a big raise and all of that. 95 cents of every dollar that we spend on people is with somebody within the school. And so we think that number, we're very proud of that number, that we try to run a pretty lean central office, and we try to put our money within the schools. I also want you to know that what we're bringing to you this evening went through a lot of revisions before it got to you. So what we normally do is we ask all of our stakeholders, what do you need and what do you want? And of course, as you can imagine, with 18 different schools, that comes in with a very big list. We immediately cut about $3 million out of that because we knew that was not a feasible kind of thing to bring to the county commission. Then we got to the central office, and then another larger group of us, all the supervisors and Ms. Anthony and I together, we cut out another $1 million from what was left of that. And then from that, we got down to a smaller budget committee, which is made up of Ms. Antrican and the 2 assistant superintendents. And we cut out about another $900,000. And so when we finally presented to the board, we had about a $308,000 deficit that we were dealing with. But I want you to know that when we got this to you, we had already made a ton of cuts in this, so that we were not asking what we thought was unreasonable in this. And that's the thing that we'll always try to do. And I think we've had a couple years together now. We don't bring over unreasonable requests. We really try to put you guys in a situation where you don't have to make tough decisions. That we've tried to make some of those tough decisions earlier before we came in here. Now, what we have done with this, and the commission can tell me if you want to see this in a different format, you have every line item in your book. So you can look at that and you can see every single line item that's in there. But what I found out, it is hard to look at every single line item and understand it. And so what we like to do is that anything that we have changed, we put up here. So if we added something or took something away, we put up here, and so you know it's the same thing we did last year, minus or adding the things that we're going to talk to you about right here. So the first thing we will do is looking at revenue changes. We've actually got some reimbursements, and this is flow-through money, so we don't really get to keep it, but about $3,000 on the ROTC and the curriculum. The BEP, that gave us about $1.5 million. And I think that you know with the BEP, that's what the state gives us. But the BEP doesn't fund every position that we got. Nor does the BEP fund any of our non-classified positions, or the majority of them. So for example, when the state said we're going to give you a 4% raise, none of that would go to a cafeteria worker, none of that would go to a custodian, none of that would go to, our teacher assistants. And we really feel those folks are as important as anybody else. And so we got to make that percentage up for those folks to give those individuals a raise too. Also in this, the BEP does not cover all of our positions. So some of our assistant principals, some of our teachers, the state says you get funded for this for every 100 or every 1,000 child that you get, and that is grossly underfunded. I think any superintendent, any school district would say you can't run a school, on what the BEP is. A very limited kind of thing. So they only fund, the majority of our positions, but not all of them. We've also had a pre-K increase in our allocations. We also had some money for the child care revenue. The state allowed us to do some free child care because they had a grant-funded position, so we get to put $40,000 back into that. We also got close to $600,000 for the second half of summer camps. We got almost 1,000 students coming back to summer school because they missed 3 months of instruction last year. So we're bringing those kids back this year to try to catch up on some things that they missed and give them a head start on next year. The state's paying for some of that, so in the majority of that. So we've got an increase with that. Just a small rehabilitation grant of $1,000. An increase in undesignated fund balance. We're putting some money into that. Also an increase in ESP reserve budget, that we took some money out of the ESP to go into that. Now, let me just stop and make sure that everybody understands that the ESP program is not funded by any tax dollars. So the ESP program is a program that we provide after school. If parents want to use it, they pay for it, and then that goes into fund, and that pays for everything in that program. So it pays for the director, it pays for all the worker, all the supplies. So that is totally funded by outside people. Same thing with our school lunch program. So our school lunch program, we use no tax dollars to fund that particular program. We take in the money that we get from meals that students purchase and that staff purchase, and our cafeteria is self-sufficient. Not all school districts are like that. Some school districts are running in deficit mode and they have to pay money into that, but we don't. Indirect costs for ESSER, and what that is we could take some of the money out of ESSER because we've got to spend a lot of time bookkeeping all that money through. And so they've allowed us to take a little bit of money out to pay for some of our folks that's got to touch all that money and all that programming. And then we've got a decrease in Project Promise of about $311,000. The reason why we called that revenue is because we got some extra money to pay for some of that, and so we didn't have to spend that particular money with that. And then we've got a decrease in textbook reserves. So overall, we ended up with about $5.1 million revenue, new revenue this year, either that we didn't have to spend for it or we got it from a different source. So, Mr. Chair, any questions first about any of the revenue changes?
Anyone have any questions?
All right, expenditures. This is normally what you guys are worried about, is expenditures, what are we spending? So the other part that we did is that we had about $568,000 in attrition. And what we want to mention with that is that when a teacher leaves at the top of the scale, and then we replace that, normally we replace them with a less veteran teacher. And so we ended up gaining about $586,000 on that. The step increase, so when we give people a step, so I was on step 10 this year, I go to step 11. We give everybody those steps. That step costs us about $614,000. So that's with everybody, that's custodians, bus drivers, so everybody on that step increase, and you have the same kind of things with your folks normally, is that if each year you get a step increase. Then we're given a 3% salary and supplemental increase. That's about $1.8 million. But what we did on that, instead of giving everybody 3%, we looked at what the highest teacher would get. The highest teacher would get $2,000 increase, $2,091. And so we said nobody gets any more than what our highest paid teacher would get. So for example, some of the folks in central office, they would get more than $2,000 because 3% on their salary would be more than that teacher. But we really felt we're going to cap everybody at $2,000 because according to my contract, I get the same percentage increase that teachers would get. So I would get 3%. It would be more than $2,000, but with this, we cap everything at $2,000, so that's with everybody. So I just wanted you to know that we take care of our teachers first, and some of the folks that's making more, it's capped at $2,000. Also, we have a degree change, so if somebody has a master's degree and they go up to a doctorate degree, there's an increase with that with the extra educational background. That's about $226,000. Then we had teacher retirement contributions. That went up just a little bit this year, so we had to add some for that. Now we're adding a 3% increase in ESP wages, but this doesn't impact you guys. It's in our general budget, but this comes out of funds they've created. So, but we have to add it in there because it goes into our general budget. We also had about $2,000 there, unemployment increase that went up. Health insurance went up about $227,000. It's kind of sad that you're glad when something only goes up 2.5% and you only got to pay $250,000 on that. But health insurance, we were actually pretty pleased. It didn't go up any more than that. Then we've got to pay the trustee's office a little bit for increased revenue, so that's about $25,000. Our property value, and we did a reassessment of our property. We bought a ton of computers this year, close to 10,000 altogether. We've got a little bit more property. We've got some other vehicles, and we realized that our insurance on our capital was not really where it should be, and so we had to raise that up just a little bit. So that went up to $10,000. Fewer buses purchased, decrease in textbooks, and decrease in Project Promise. And then also a decrease in honorariums and incentives, so we took some money out of that. Again, ESP, we just had to include this, we gave them a little bit more money for supplies and equipment, that comes out of their own money. Now, the $3 million in capital budget, you might not remember this last year, but when we came to you last year about this same time, we were very concerned that the sales tax was just going to bottom out. We were concerned people might not be able to pay property taxes, and we were looking at a horrific financial year. So we only put about $700,000 in capital, and we said we're going to take care of our people first. Then, if things are not as bad as we think they are, then we'll add some more things to the capital project. So from last year, we increased it $3 million. But the reason, this is normally what we have in there, $3 million. But from last year to this year, we went from 6, 7, 800,000, whatever it was, to $3 million, because now it's a more normal year, and we're back on schedule with some of the roof replacements and some of the roofs and chillers and boilers and those kind of things. So even though that number is a huge number, that is normally what we have in there. Then the other part that we need to talk to you about, we did remove 7 teaching positions at Alpha, Manley, West Elementary, East Ridge, Lincoln Middle, Meadowview, and Westview. And that just goes to numbers. That we ended up having 29, 50 less kids in some of these schools, and so we took a teacher out to kind of help make up the budget piece. So that changed in some of the expenditures that we had. Well, on the same thing, we had to add back a teacher at Russellville because we took one away last year, and they increased in enrollment, so we had to add one back. So in the top one, we got to take it away because it was an expenditure, but on the other one. Then we included a full-time custodian at West High School because you saw the new addition that we added and the new cafeteria. Plus, we did not add a new custodian when we built the Freshman Academy. So the Freshman Academy, the new office, the new cafeteria, the new restrooms, the new addition on the gym back there, they were doing that with the same number of people that they had before any of that was done. So we added a custodian to that. We are adding a preschool teacher. We really feel that preschool is an important piece to everything that we're doing. If we can get those kids earlier, it just makes a huge difference. And so we're going to try to add a preschool. That would be either at Hillcrest, we're hoping, or at Lincoln Elementary. That's the place where we need the most help. Then there's a 5% of the bookkeeper and financial positions funded through ESSER, so we would end up having that, but that comes through ESSER funds. Then we did make some salary adjustments for the transportation supervisor. He was really not on the right schedule. He should have been on a non-decreed schedule, and something happened with that he didn't get placed on that, and so we are just putting him where he should be. Then the salary adjustment for the extended school program manager, but again, that money comes out of our own money. And then you can see the other things that we've done there. We've adjusted some other salary schedules. The 596, all that comes out of the state grant. So that's nothing that locally we're paying for. All that comes out of the state grant. Then there's some software that we're doing. And then we put in there, this was a last minute thing, and I'm not entirely sure this number is accurate. I think this number is probably low. $40,000 for 2 additional school resource officers. Currently, the county provides one for us free. Or provides them at the high school free, and then we pay a little bit on the city. So this one, I've had some conversations with both the sheriff's department and the city, and we're trying to get a firm number on that. So that number, I'm pretty confident, will fluctuate and probably go up. So, Mr. Chair, the bottom line is expenditures changed about $5.4 million, and so we end up with a shortfall of about $308,000 is what the shortfall would be. So, let me talk to you a little bit about ESSER, and then I'll go back to the expenditures if you guys have questions. We've already had ESSER 1, 2, well, there's 3 ESSER funds. The first one was given back to us several months ago. We've already approved that, and we spent all the money. We spent all that money basically on just computers and connectivity. So to get students lined up, and that's what it was designed to do. They understood that people were going to have to go virtually, and so they gave money. And so that was a small pot of money. Well, it was, Tracy, how much was that first part? 2.3 million, but we spent almost all of that on computers and connectivity. The next pot of money, ESSER 2.0, was basically for the same thing. And again, we spent most of that on technology, connectivity, plus we did some remediation. We knew that kids needed some help to get caught back up, so we spent some money on that. ESSER 3.0, we have to get that approved in July or August. And what we're spending that on, again, is some technology. Most of it, though, and this is what most people are doing, is they're buying temporary staff. Because what we realize, if we are going to catch a kid up in reading, you're going to have to get them in small groups, and get small groups, and you have to get folks in the classroom. And so almost all of that is we're hiring staff for 2 years, and we're letting them know this is a 2-year process. And at the end of 2 years, the position won't be there. Then some software, a lot of it is going to remediation and intervention. So we're going to have some after-school tutoring. We have some kids coming in this summer to work with them. And then we are paying a stipend. The federal government said that anybody that worked during a COVID-related experience, we're kind of in a combat situation, and so you can provide a little bit of a bonus to folks with that. And so we will provide a bonus to everybody in the district, because everybody, bus driver, cafeteria worker, teacher aide, everybody did something extraordinary during that time. And then the other piece that we have in there right now, which we will talk to you in more depth on June the 14th, they did allow us to put money into facility improvements. And right now we do have $5 million in there to go toward the Lincoln Elementary project. So whether it's new construction or whether it's renovation, we put some money in there to kind of help jumpstart that program, so that it's not as big a burden on the county commission or on our taxpayers. So right now we do have money in there for that particular project. So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, before I get past expenditures, though, do you want to talk about anything on those expenditures, and you have those in here?
How about on the computers and the Wi-Fi's? Has it been successful in getting those returned, or is there a much loss rate?
Surprisingly, we were very conservative about letting those go home to elementary and middle school students, because just everything happens. You can't keep your coat in elementary school, let alone a computer. So we were very conscientious about that. And what we also did, if anything messed up, get it back to us quickly and let us repair it before it becomes a problem. So with the majority of that, we've really had very few problems or issues.
And how has the program worked for getting the reduction of the cost of the books? Obviously, you saved some significant money here. What's that going to look like over the life of those computers?
We do feel pretty good about that there is this battle between the state and districts that a lot of us feel like we could move toward a more technology-based book program. The state's not there 100% yet, and so, but they're growing in that way, because now there's actually a lot of things online that have the same capability, and we can get in the hands of students. So eventually we do think all of our books will be digital, but right now we're not at that point yet, from the state and also from some other things. But
Dr. Perry, the $5 million that you're receiving is going toward Lincoln. Is there a length of time, certain period of time you have to spend that?
Yes, we have to spend it within 2 years. We have to have it allocated, and it can be toward any capital project, but we've got an earmark toward Lincoln right now. And Tracy, I believe, is it October of 2020?
ESSER 3 is June 30, 2024.
So June of 2024, we have to have the money spent by that particular time.
To continue with Lincoln, we know there's a need there, a really big need. Have you already got a plan or a timeline, or you got
We do.
something?
We do, and I'm coming on June the 14th to deliver that. I didn't have that presentation in this one. But we do have that, and we've got options for the commission to consider to go through that.
And the capital programming and the ESSER funding, Is that where the 5 million is? Or?
Yes, sir, in ESSER 3.0, we got about $20 million or so. 20.3 million in that. We're taking a quarter of it out to do facility improvements. And then the rest of it is going to those other things that I mentioned.
Dr. Perry,
Yes, sir.
just for my clarification.
Yes.
You said that the resource officers, the county provides you a resource officer, and you paid for one from the city?
We did not have that in our budget presentation going to the board. The board requested last night, and this was just last night. We have 2 school resource officers for the 4 middle schools. And so what the board wanted us to do is put a resource officer in each one of the middle schools. And so I got that directive last night. And so I was calling people, well, Wednesday and today, trying to get some cost estimates. So that one is still one I need to, first of all, find out, can we get them? You know, I think that's a big piece. Do they have the staff actually, because I know they struggle sometimes staffing just the road patrols and all of those kind of things, in the jail and different pieces. So right now, I know very little about the details of that because we are so far away from getting a resolution.
Okay, thank you.
And I know that wasn't the answer that you wanted, but I
Well,
don't.
maybe you can come back later when you find
I
out it's
can.
been ironed out and just
I will.
let us know how that worked out.
I will, and we'll certainly do that. And the thing that I will say, and the reason why we did not have this in our original presentation, is that when we've called the city or we've called the county, they have been phenomenal in getting there and being right there for us. And so we felt really good that if we needed anything, we have 2 resource officers at each one of the high schools, and so they're very good about getting out to us very quickly. The only thing that we have a little bit is out on East Ridge. You know, that's a little bit not as centrally located as some of our other schools, and so that one's a little bit more concerning.
Dr. Perry, would it be a city officer and a county officer?
Right now, that's what we're looking at. Now, it may be that one can't do it, and we ask, you know, one side or the other to pick up both. So right now, we're trying to ease the burden out of going and trying to get one from each.
Dr. Perry, are there any additional safety measures being put into the playground areas of these schools, or any concern with that at this point?
We have got several hundreds of thousands of dollars into safety things. A lot of those things went into surveillance cameras and into external doors, about making sure those locked and that we had key cards for those. And then just some of the basic HVAC systems, because really what you're supposed to do with this ESSER money, it was not to take care of any capital program. So not to go out there and buy another school bus. It was designed to, if you've got a COVID-related issue, and the reason why we put Lincoln Elementary in there is that, and the state's reviewing this, we said that the HVAC system is that old paper ventilation stuff, that, and it's actually literally just dissolving. It's falling apart. And that's not holding heat and air well, and it's getting a lot of outside pollutants into the duct system. And then the other part is we don't have return air into those particular schools. And so what we're doing is we said that there's a possibility we can renovate this school, but there's also a possibility it doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I believe that they're going to allow us to do that one on a new construction or renovation, either way. But on playgrounds, like I couldn't go in and just do another playground piece of equipment. But if it were a dangerous situation, then I could.
What about like fencing and things of that nature?
Fencing, if it were a safety issue, yes, I could. So if we were in a situation close to a street, we could probably justify that. And we have looked at some of that. So I know that we have one school that was always there was a family with a dog, and normally the dog was tied up, but, you know, sometimes not, and so we are looking at some of those kind of issues. Other issues on expenditures? Okay. So on the capital budget, and this is capital budget, this is really, we have this every year. So you've had this, except for last year. Last year we cut out just a bunch of things. But a lot of these are reoccurring. So for example, in line item number 2 in the carpet and tile, we have $150,000 in there every year. We just replaced $150,000 of carpet and tile in 18 schools. Same thing with painting. We do $100,000 worth of painting every year. We're about going through the different schools and doing that. The gym floors, the fencing, fire alarms. I won't go through all of these pieces, but I think you can see that, you know, that we do have a roof schedule in place. So we're trying to make sure that we take care of a roof every year. We're trying to take care of an HVAC system every year. The other part that we will say is on that right-hand column where it says the second one down, purchase of mobile units at Fairview, Hillcrest, and at Meadowview. Some of those, what we've done is that on those, we've been renting those for a long period of time. And actually, you know, going back to a couple of years, Mr. Jarvis actually commented about that, and that actually got us looking at that. And they wouldn't let us out of the lease contract until this year. But this year it just makes more sense for us to buy it, because with us buying it, we will own them in two years as opposed to, you know, paying for them forever. So that one, we're just going to go ahead and buy those, and it just makes more financial sense to do that. But all the rest of them, I think, are just normal routine things that we do. Any questions about any of those things?
Have we purchased any land?
We have. We actually purchased a piece of land over here at West, over here at East. It was one of those houses, you know, on the block. And then we're trying to get an option on another piece, and that would give us 2 adjoining pieces to kind of increase on some parking and some of those things over there. And then we purchased the Bell property last year over there at West. And then one more house over there at West also. So we try to keep it within the amount that we have budgeted. Any questions?
What about parking? Are you doing take it for parking or
At West?
increase asphalt work?
Yes. Actually, if you look on the left-hand column, about 3/4 of the way down, we have paving and resurfacing. So every year we have about $350,000 in there for paving and resurfacing, because it's just constant. We never really get ahead of that, but every year we're trying to we take the worst parking lot, the worst road, and we pick it. Now the other part, if you will go over to the right-hand column, second from the last, the bus lane at Meadowview, we're doing a bus lane around the school. And if you've ever been over there at Meadowview in the afternoon, the line is backed up all the way, and you actually have to take the chances. You get in that lane that's kind of coming the other way, and you try to get into the parking lot. So if we can do this, then it would help us increase the safety piece there just a little bit at Meadowview.
Last year at Fairview Marguerite, yeah, you bought that property, extra property go down?
2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yep.
Okay. Have we got any plans for that property?
We are actually in the process, right? No firm plans. So, and we bought that, you know, with the intention of looking at doing some construction out there. And then after we did a real analysis of where our greatest needs were, we kind of changed that. And so we kind of held off on that just a little bit, but we were actually talking about that property today for some other things. So, but no firm things for that right now. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we know that we've had a good sales tax year. You know, I think all of us were kind of surprised about how sales tax come in, and I think a lot of that is stimulus money, which will dry up sooner than later. So, you know, we can't live off of that forever. We understand that. We've had a little bit of property tax increase, I think, and probably can anticipate a little bit more with all the subdivisions and housing projects going in, but again, that's not immediate. But I do think that's in the future. So our request this evening is that if we could get $307,804, and Tracy made me put in the 50 cents to just get it even. So that's what we're requesting. That would enable us to give our folks a 3% raise, enable us to do the step increases, all those things that we had back in the expenditure piece, to be able to fund this year's budget. And do remember, I know that everybody that comes here tells you this, that number was a lot higher when we started out. We did a lot of work to cut that amount down to get that to a point where we thought it was a reasonable piece to bring through to you this evening. So, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, we're open for questions. Now, I may have to get Ms. Anderson to come up here if it's anything detailed. So, questions?
Dr. Perry, in the last 2 years, we've had budget increases or requests. It seems like we've compromised on the maintenance of effort.
We have.
That may be something we need to discuss.
And we're open to those discussions. And we're open also to discussions about sales tax and some of those kind of, because the thing that we firmly believe in, when it's good, you know, we would hope the commission would be good to us. When it goes bad, then we would come with that understanding. Because in the last year, we thought it was bad. And we didn't ask for it. We asked for the $200,000 that you had not in maintenance of effort, just level fund us. We didn't ask for anything. But we thought things were bad, and we made it work. And we cut a lot of positions. We cut a lot of things to make it work this year. We're open to that conversation about, because we do realize the financial prosperity may be above it. And yes, I do think it's going to improve once we get the houses built and the property taxes are generated, but that could be 3 or 4 years before we finally realize that.
No doubt that you and the school system did a phenomenal job last year, and what you did in helping families and students, and with the budget that you had. So we appreciate that. And I think that you're bringing a decent budget. And also, I believe that you're being frugal with it. So.
We really hope that we are. And I will say, too, everything that we did, so all those highlights, as you all know, you all were a big part of that, because if you hadn't funded us throughout the years like you funded us, we couldn't have done that. So even though we said we did it, it was really a collective we that I'm talking about with that. So you all took the heat and the pressure for everything that you gave to us, but we hope we turned around and gave that back to the community.
And I want to say that I appreciate the fact that you kept the schools open 175 days. It would have made a lot of sense for us to look at that model in other places, probably.
You know, we feel probably the most proud about 2 things, is that we kept school open, and we had half of the infection rate of the county. And guys, I mean, if you think about that for just a minute, I took a kindergarten teacher, and some of you know how this works. If you've got grandkids, it's no different than in kindergarten. They are all over you all the time with a runny nose and everything on their hands, and everything goes in their mouth, and they're hugging you. And we still kept that at 7%. So we feel real good about that we kept the folks safe and we kept school open. So, and we had a good instructional year. I feel good about that too. It wasn't that we just kept school open. We did good things in school. And we'll get our state test results back, but some of our benchmark scores, we feel pretty good about some things.
Well, what about kindergarten and first grade, teaching them to read online? How did that go?
You know, actually, we give them benchmark assessments. In some of our virtual classes, we actually had our highest, I know our highest third grade language arts was from a virtual teacher. She did a phenomenal job on that. She's incredible. And we had some high scores in our kindergarten, first and second grade. You know, it's kind of a little bit hard to evaluate kids at that age. But we had some good scores, but they were not as good as being in a classroom. Now, what we did do, just so that you guys know, is that last quarter, we looked at everybody, unless you've got a doctor's note, or unless you've got a B average, you've got to come back to school. Because you're not doing well and you're struggling. And so we probably forced 10% of the 25% of the kids to come back because they were just not being successful. And that gave us at least 2 months to kind of try to catch them up from some of the loss. And right now, we've had no cases in the school in the last 2 weeks. So, no, we don't think that will last. Well, it may last because we only got one more day. But as of today, we didn't have any cases. So we feel pretty good about that.
Next year, you're not having virtual school.
Next year, we are doing away, well, no, we won't have virtual there. We've always had virtual school. We've had it for, but that was only for kids who couldn't, like I wanted to take band, but I really wanted to take AP biology, and I couldn't work it out in my schedule, so we let you take it on Niswonger or some other state program. So we'll always have virtual education for some kids that need it, but the wide scale thing, everybody's got to come back to school next year. And actually the state changed that too. You actually have to have a state accredited number to actually run, and none of us have a state accredited number. So nobody can do a school unless they have that state accredited number. Yes, sir.
This $307,000.
Which page are you on? Or what are you on? Which one?
He's on the request page.
Oh, on the request page, yeah.
Okay. On the request, but
Uh-huh. Go ahead, I'm with you now.
there you go. And excuse me if I'm being redundant, but the request for $307,000, is that going to be just $307,000, or is that going to come under maintenance of effort and be repaid?
That's what you guys have to decide. We could, you know, of course, we always love for it to go under maintenance of effort, but at the same point in time, if it's a situation where you guys feel more comfortable doing something else, then we're open to that. Because again, we realize sales tax is not going to stay as robust as it's been. And if it does cut down next year, and this property tax doesn't increase from some of the things, then you're not on the hook for that.
We have to increase the effort to catch up with the maintenance, right?
Well, you would. But now, again, the thing that we're looking at is that a relatively modest amount. But now part of the other piece that we've got to kind of consider with this too is at some point in time, we've got to kind of increase it a little bit because, you know, if we give raises to folks, you know, you can't keep, you know, the same level of funding and continue with inflation and everything else going up. You know, you just can't sustain that. But this is an uncertain time perhaps, and so with this, we're okay with looking at some of those options.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
We gave you the money for the bond issue, you know, to build the new addition. You made a statement that you had any money left over, you was going to give it back.
It is coming back.
Well, we'd like to just kind of know your thought about it. I think you probably need it for the paving or whatever, but I just want to know what your thought was.
What I'm going to do is on June 14th, I'll have that number for you. We're opening bids on Monday for the paving. So that's really the last project that I have to do, because there's one section out there that's gravel right now that we told you guys that we couldn't get paving back in the winter because, and I don't know if you guys have done this lately, but it's hard to get somebody to even bid on a small project right now because folks are so consumed with the big ones. But we've got the bid opening on Monday. I'll know what it's gonna cost, and then on June the 14th, I'm gonna give you the amount that we're gonna be returning back. I mean, it's not gonna be 12 million, but we will give you back what we had left over, and we didn't do other projects with it. We will be very open with you, show you everything that we did. Everything that we told you we were gonna do, we did, and we didn't do anything outside of what we told you we were gonna do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone have a motion as to how?
Yeah, Randy, what I'd like to do, I'd like to make a motion, we go ahead and approve this on a one-time basis until next year, that way we figure out what's going on with the economy and the tax base and stuff like that.
So that would be the full 307,
307, Yeah.
804, 50.
yes.
Okay, we have a motion to do it in a way that there is no
Maintenance effort.
maintenance of effort. Okay. We have a second.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Reading the paper last night, I think the paper had a different figure than this 307.
Yeah, and this is the number of it. This is the number. I think that there might have been a mistake in the paper.
I think 268.
Yeah, and what happened with that is that number was the number before we added the 40,000 in for the school resource officers. So, and that was probably my fault. I gave the reporter that old copy that we had going in before the school resource officer. So when the board made the motion, it bumped it up $40,000, so it ended up being 370. So that was my fault. I gave the wrong papers out.
Mr. Chairman, just if I could ask for, our plan Tuesday was to come with some options from the finance department on how to fund this and how to structure how the revenue numbers would work. In other words, we've got a plan that we would like to show on the revenue side. And it would involve moving some pennies around, sales tax dollars. I would ask that you delay a vote tonight and wait till next Tuesday, and until you see the whole picture of funding school.
That'd be fine with me, I can rescind my motion to this.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, certainly do appreciate you. And again, I think the thing that probably doesn't work well in this situation is that you never really get to see the end result of what you do. Some of you that came over, and toured West, you kind of saw that a little bit. And you kind of saw what kind of improvements that made. And so, with a lot of our folks, you guys make a huge difference, and it's a positive difference. And so, just always remember, it's not just votes in here, and it's not just money. What you're doing this year may put a preschool teacher in a classroom that's going to be working with 20-some kids that could make a huge difference in their lives and kind of get them started again. So we try to take the money that you give us. We try to use it conservatively, and we try to be good stewards. So we appreciate the opportunity to present, and anytime, if any commissioner has questions, give us a call, and we'd be more than happy to answer those questions.
Dr. Perry, I thank you, because I see it through my grandchildren, so thank you.
You're very welcome. So it's our honor and it's our pleasure to do it. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Okay, on the announcements, we have June 8th meeting at 5 o'clock and one on June 10th. And anything else, Mayor? And we are adjourned.